again for another amazing interview. I am Latoya Clark, the host of Butterfly Chats, and I have an amazing warrior sitting right over here or over there. I always get my sides mixed up. It's like whichever way. um, and we're gonna have a wonderful conversation, and so we're gonna let Ray Lee introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Rayleigh. I'm 36. I live in the beautiful Great White North, which is Canada. I have been living with multiple diseases since I was about 9 or 10 years old. They keep coming at me, and I just keep learning how to deal with it.
I get that. It's like once you get used to a set of symptoms and you think you finally have it mastered, it's like nope.
Right?
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
can I get a break? Like can we just move on?
Uh-huh. I'm done. We don't need any more new ones. Let's just stop. I've got 8 diagnosed so far, and they're still trying to figure out a couple others. I'm like, yeah, no, that's it. I'm done.
Basically. It's like I've already mastered that already. Not gonna do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I was looking over your bio and like
Mhm.
some of your history, and you've been dealing with this for a while, since like childhood.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
tell us how that is.
So I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I got I don't know which came first, fibromyalgia or restless leg syndrome, but they kind of both
Mm.
happened around the same time. And my mom just thought it was growing pains, but like
Mhm.
my skin, like especially like right in these areas along the arms, would feel like they were burning.
Mm.
And and especially like, if I had to like try and write for like doing homework or anything and have my skin down because you're writing and it's on the table, and it would just hurt so much. And there would just be a couple other points too of like my legs hurting, of like again this burning sensation, and my mom would be like, oh, that's just growing pains, that's just normal. And I'd go to try and sleep at night, and my legs would just start spasming, and then you'd be like going like constant contracting, and it would take like so long to fall asleep. I remember like sometimes it would take like an hour or two to try and fall asleep at night. I was very lucky that um, my mom put me in a meditation class, and so it was just like a meditation for beginners, but it did help me because when I would have trouble sleeping, I'd just start meditating and then I'd fall asleep meditating, because it'd be at like enough where I could like just, I guess, essentially just be focusing on my breathing was enough to like help me like calm down and not quite notice like my legs and everything else being a bothersome, and then fall asleep. Or it was maybe sheer exhaustion. I don't fully know, but um,
Right.
yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I'm very glad that my RLS never manifested in the day, because my grandma played in the symphony. So there was lots of times where I was going to the symphony, and to have dancing legs at that point would have just been horrible, to like just be so fidgety and having to get up. And it wasn't until my RLS made a comeback as an adult that it started being a problem in the day. But I did have a little quiet period in my teenage years when my endometriosis kicked in, that my RLS was like, okay, I'm just going to kind of quiet down a little bit. And so that
Take a
was at
break.
least a nice break.
And I mean, I can already. I mean, I know how difficult it is to deal with these things as an adult. That
Yeah.
you can make your own informed decisions, but a child, and like how
Mhm.
did that have any type of mental health issues or like struggles with you, or did you just like trust your mom, like, oh, she may be right. Yeah, I'm just growing. I'm just getting bigger.
Well, I figured, yeah, okay, she must kind of know that it's like just growing pains. And I was like, if this is growing pains, like, oh my God, this
Stop
sucks. Like, I
it.
can't believe people have to go through this. Like,
Right.
this,
Why do we
how?
grow?
Oh my God. Like, this would growiness. I don't want to grow. No, I'll stay this small little thing. Yeah, it was quite brutal. And like, um, when I got a really bad case of food poisoning about 11 years old. It gave me something called reactive arthritis.
Mhm.
And so that's an arthritis that comes on due to usually some sort of like really bad infection, like a food poisoning. So my joints would start to swell and I'd have like pains, but all the tests said, you're fine. There's nothing going on. And like, if it wasn't for the fact that like my doctor and a rheumatologist actually saw my knees were inflamed and swollen at one point, they probably just would have been like, oh yeah, no, it's just growing pains too. But I had to
Wow.
stop doing dancing. I had to stop doing karate. And then came the fatigue, and everyone just thought I was lazy. It's like, I'm
Mm.
not lazy. I have fatigue, but I didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
my mom's piling on of, oh, you're now lazy. And my older sisters, and oh, you're lazy. And
Right.
no, no, no. I
Now
have
the whole family is just
diseases
like,
that cause massive fatigue. Yeah. And so that started to like take a toll on my mental health and feeling like, oh, I can't keep up with people. And I hated PE class in high school, especially because at that point I had endometriosis. And so
wow.
then there was even more fatigue,
Mm.
and running would cause extreme pain because of all my joint issues. And so I hated to run. So I would try not to run. And of course, oh, they make you run so
Of
much
course.
in PE. And I hated it. And so like I would finish with like a couple of the other girls who were like, 300-pound girls, and here's me, 175, and people would be like, bitch, you just look like you're lazy. Like, you should be able to do
Like
this.
go
And it's like,
faster. Like
you don't understand. Like, it is agonizing. And I feel it like through my whole skeletal system when I run.
yeah.
Even if I just try and like run on the balls of my feet, which is the least painful way to do it. So in an emergency situation, I will do that.
Right.
But like even that is still just, it's too painful. So I hated it. There were so many times I like pretended I was my mom and wrote doctor's notes to be like, oh, please excuse Sam from PE because, or Ray from PE because uh Ray's in too much pain today, or has got la 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 la. And then I was very grateful that I had mostly women for PE teachers. There's only one year
Mm.
where I had a man, but
Mhm.
that was awesome because it was like, oh, yeah, it's not time of the month. And then he'd be like, oh, okay. And he would not ask any questions. I would just be like, okay, you can go sit
That
down.
that's
So
always the
that was
go
a
to.
joy.
Like anytime you get a man to shut up, I'm on my
Yeah.
period. Oh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. They're just like, oh, okay, you're done. I'm not saying anything else. And it's like, okay, yay, whew. But with the women, it was also really nice because they also understood. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, if you've got your period and you're in too much pain, then okay, something must be going on because that's not normal. Thankfully,
right.
I guess they understood that.
Right.
No one else in my family understood that, oh, it's not normal to be in excruciating pain. Um, but I was really lucky that in high school, my best friend, um, I think she also had endometriosis because she would have such debilitating periods that she couldn't even attend school. She was just in
Mhm.
so much agony and just
Mhm.
insane flow that she was like, no, I'm not going to go to school. So there'd be an entire week of her not showing up every month just because of how bad
Wow.
her stuff was. And so it was like, at least I had the camaraderie for a little bit
Right.
of like, okay, there's someone else who
Somebody.
has extreme pain when they're going through this. And like, it made my PMS so bad. I remember there was one day I literally wrote a sign on my back saying, do not disturb. I'm PMSing like crazy. And I put it on my back, and I was in the library doing computer stuff because I was like, I do not want anyone messing with me. I will like lose my mind on you, and it will
Have like a
not be
guard dog around you.
yeah.
Like don't cross.
Uh-huh. Don't cross. And I was very blessed that when I took oh, what's it called? Depo-Provera. So it's a
Mm.
shot for birth control. And when I started that, my PMS stopped and it went in complete opposite. And then I was like pooping rainbows. I was so incredibly happy. And when I should like normally be just like screaming and raging, and I was just like, this is so weird. What is going
Mhm.
on? And then I did 3 yeah, I think 3 months of that. I can't remember how long the cycle is of like you take it a couple of months and then you're supposed to stop
Mhm.
and take a break. And so when I did, I stopped and everything, and then I didn't get my period for 18 months. And I
Mm.
hadn't had my period at all during being on the shot, which I loved so much because I
A bit.
was a heavy bleeder. Like, at nighttime, I'd have to wear adult diapers and still put like pads in the adult diapers just because of how heavy I would
Wow.
bleed. Otherwise, I'd be having to wake up every hour to change my pad at night. I'm not gonna be able to get sleep. So I
No.
was mortified. Here I am, 14 years old, wearing an adult diaper at night because
Right.
I bleed so heavy. And in the daytime, I'd like put at least like 4 or 5 pads down and then a bunch of toilet paper wrapping around that. And I would still just like bleed through that. Like I don't know
Right.
how
Couldn't sleep
much
because you're all
money.
bulked up.
Yeah, yeah. And then
It's
you're
like,
just like
oh, that wedge
awkward
down there.
and you
It's
move
like,
all funny and everything. And yeah, it was just like, an uncomfortable thing. Baggy, weird little bottoms. I'm so glad I was a tomboy, so I wore baggy pants so no one could see. But like,
right.
yeah, it was pretty brutal, and I don't know how much money my poor mom had to spend on menstruation products because it was a house of
You was
girls. It
running
was
through
my
them. Like
mom,
literally running through them.
my older sibling, and me all menstruating, and then here's me like insane heavy heavy one.
Jesus.
So like that's why I'm such an advocate for like free menstruation pads because I know how expensive it can be. And this was like back in the early 2000s when things were a lot cheaper for feminine
Right.
hygiene
Yeah.
products.
You could actually afford things.
Yeah, and now it's just like it's even worse. And like, yeah, for people with endometriosis, they definitely need access to free feminine hygiene products.
Free
Um,
hemorrhaging pads. It's kind of
yeah,
basically what they are because you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
bleeding out.
um, but yeah, high school was definitely a challenging time because of having those multiple diseases and not understanding it. Um, and of course, with fibromyalgia, restless leg syndrome, and endometriosis, they all cause bloating.
Mm,
So I was bullied for being fat. Even though I wasn't fat, I
mm.
was bloated, but I didn't know that. And again,
Right.
that started when I was in elementary school in uh, grade 4. I started showing and presenting. So I was being
That's
bullied
crazy.
at that young age for being fat, even though
That's
I just had this
crazy.
tiny little bloated belly. And it was
Wow.
ridiculous. So, it starts adding in of, oh, oh, you're lazy, and oh, you're fat. And of course you're fat because you're
And
lazy.
and it
Like,
that's so like at what point did you actually get a diagnosis to where you could kind of start putting some answers to all of that? Like that's trauma. That's like just
yeah.
that's trauma. Just sit there.
Actually, it came at a rough year for me. It was 2007. Um, suffered my second miscarriage that year,
Mm,
and I'd been having like the most debilitating, agonizing cramps in my entire life. So I finally like kept going to the walk-in clinic, and there was this guy, and he's like, you know what? I have space in my office. You can come see me. I'll start like being your family doctor. I was like, oh, thank you so much. He's like,
mhm,
let's send you to a gynecologist. So in November, um, 2 months after I'd had my second miscarriage, I saw the gynecologist, and so I told her everything about all like my period stuff and everything, and how I thought I had like miscarriages and everything. And she's like, "Yep, so those probably were miscarriages.
mm,
Um, but we can do a pregnancy test because you still have the hormones." And I didn't know about that. So if I'd known about that, like when I had my first miscarriage, I would have gotten a test to know for sure.
mhm.
But like, it was basically like um, probably about 2 months along. So there was just like this large ball of bloody mess in the toilet.
Mhm.
And so I was just like, I've never seen that before. That's really weird. And so, like, the first time it happened, I was living with my female best friend. So I called her into the bathroom. I was like, okay, I know this is going to be a little gross, but
Right.
have I ever
Feels
seen anything
horrible.
like this before? Because I haven't. And did I just miscarry? And so she looked at it and she was just like, what the fuck? I don't know. I think that's so large of a thing. Because, like, yeah, you can get really large blood
Yeah,
clots that come
exactly.
out of you. But this was like, um, probably about,
Mm.
mm, or so big.
Wow.
Um, so I was just like, I don't know. So just after about like 3 hours, I was like, okay, I think that was a miscarriage. I'm gonna have to flush the toilet. I'm not comfortable with that, but I can't just keep keep it
Right.
sitting there.
Just
So
carry it around the bag. Yeah, it's like,
so
what
I
you gonna
did
do?
that, and then when it happened again in October, and it was crazy. It was February 11th was the first time, and then the second time was October 11th. So I
Mm.
think it's just so wild that it was both on an 11th for the days.
Mhm.
But on October 11th, went to the bathroom, just felt like I was having a normal pee. Got up, went to turn around to flush the toilet, and saw again the same size bloody thing in there, and I was like, really, like, seriously again. And
Wow.
I was just like, oh my god. So again, it took me a couple hours to like work up the nerve to flush the toilet, and I was already happy that I was like going to be seeing my doctor about it. So when I talked to the gynecologist, she's like, yeah, we can do a pregnancy test. So she did that, and it did confirm that I had been pregnant. So it was for sure a miscarriage
Mm.
in October. And then she's like, and I'm pretty sure you have this disease called endometriosis. And I'm like 98% sure you have this. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. So she's like, what we'll do is I'll schedule you in for a laparoscopic procedure. So that's where they make the tiny little incisions,
Mhm.
and they stick in tools and they look inside with like a camera to see like what's going on inside. And then she's like, and if we see any of the endometriosis, then we'll go in and we'll use ablation. So that's using a little laser to um, remove any of the endometriosis tissue that builds up in the body when you have endometriosis. And like with endometriosis, it's your endometrium lining sheds on your uterus every month. And when that sheds, that's your blood that comes out. And for people with endometriosis, for some unknown reason, um, you get endometrium lining that grows in other spots on your body. And it, like, kind of think of it as like spider webbing that happens of kind of like a scar tissue, so it can like connect your organs together, so you can have like your stomach fused onto your bowels.
Mhm.
And that can then cause issues because they're not supposed to be touching,
Right.
and it
That's not where
causes
that goes.
some sensitivity stuff, and it can spread throughout your body, kind of like how cancer can spread throughout your body.
Mhm.
And it like can be found on your lungs. I think the only places it has not been found is the spinal cord, the brain stem, and the eyes, I think. But
Mm.
it gets everywhere. Like
Mhm.
it's pretty crazy for how it spreads. And they think that if you have surgery, um, then that can have small little pieces that don't get broken up spread throughout your body. Then they just start growing in new places, and
Mhm.
so that it's not 100% sure if that's what's happening, but it's kind of looking like maybe that's what is. So they're trying to limit how much surgeries people have, but surgeries used to be like the gold standard treatment for it. And sometimes, like in my case, I needed my surgeries because I had so much growths happening inside. It was just causing agony, and they can kind of tear a little bit with movements.
Mhm.
And so then all of a sudden, you've got tearing flesh inside of you. And so,
Mhm.
you know, you you start sweating like crazy, vomiting, and it's an ugly mess. And I got to the point um, between my first surgery and my second surgery where I couldn't sleep on my back because it was just
Hmm.
too much painful. I had to basically be
Right.
in the fetal position. I couldn't stand up straight. I couldn't sit up straight. I always had to be slightly bent over just because that's how the tissue, scar tissue, and endo tissue had grown inside and fused that I needed to be that way. Otherwise, I'd be like, excuse me, pulling up to straighten up would cause stuff to start tearing or
Mm.
straining. And so after my second surgery that I had in 2018, I was like, oh my God, I can stand up straight. I can sit up straight. I can lay on my back. Oh my goodness. It was amazing. It was a huge game changer. I've been so blessed that it allowed me to have a much better quality of life than what I had previously been having. And thankfully, because of being on the medication Vizan, um, I I'm not classified as in kind of low remission, but that's how I see it, as like I have
Hmm.
very, very minimal growth and issues happening right now with my endometriosis. Thank the Lord, like knock on wood. I'm so happy because with everything else going haywire in my life, I'm glad that there's one that's at least kind of behaving.
Exactly. Give it, there's like I say, the small wins. Gotta take what I can
Yeah.
get. Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
so, when did you start getting diagnosed with like all the others? Your fibromyalgia and like, well, so it's like you say, it's fibromyalgia, restless leg, and endometriosis. Is that all the chronic illnesses you have?
No, actually, I
I
wish.
was like, it seems like it should be more, but I'm like, not wishing it on
Those,
you. But I'm just saying,
yeah,
I know how
yeah,
I know how this ride goes.
yeah, yeah. Those were the first three that I had. And then in 2009, I had my appendix removed because it was starting to burst. And by the time they got me into surgery, it was like it was bursting. It was not in the normal location that the appendix is supposed to be in because it was like it was moving and bursting, and there was like
Wow.
the fluid. So I think they figure like I was probably 2 hours away from death by the
Mm.
time they got me in for surgery. So I was like, oh, you guys are so lucky because, like, yeah, that was just a hellish nightmare of overcrowding in the hospital
Mm.
and just not getting seen and being in so much pain and not knowing what's going on. And then they're like, oh, yeah, so we think it's your appendix and we think it's bursting, but we're going to have to wait till there's like at some point to go in for surgery because it's not emergent, but it still can kill you if it bursts. So it's one of those weird things where you're just like, you try and like have it make sense, but it to me it doesn't make sense of being like,
Mm-mm.
you can actually die from a burst appendix, but we're not going to rush you into surgery right this instant.
We're
Like,
gonna wait till it bursts and then rush
yeah,
you.
we're going to wait till it's really, really bad, and then you're like on death's door, and then we'll get you into surgery.
Wow.
Like, and it's pretty wild because I think just a couple years ago there was a teenage girl who her appendix was bursting, and the doctors weren't really paying much attention to her, and her dad was like some news journalist, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna listen to what he's saying. And then they got her into surgery, and she was like, I think half an hour away from dying, and she ended up getting like sepsis and stuff because it when it goes and it gets really bad
Yeah.
really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was just like, you guys almost did that with me. Like, it was wild. And just your appendix, nasty little small thing. But yeah, it's a problem. And so when I had that removed, within a month, I started getting migraines. And I'd never
Mm.
had a migraine in my entire life before. And the first migraine, I was at work and it hit. And within 10 minutes, I was running to the bathroom and throwing up because it was so agonizing. And I was just like, what is going on? What is this? Oh my God, this is a migraine? People live with this? Oh. And And so I was sent home and just went straight to sleep because I didn't have much for pain relief at the time. And little did I know that this was going to start becoming a problem where I was going to start getting these debilitating migraines really, really fast that would have me throw up within about 20 minutes of it hitting. Or like if I managed to like have it feel come on and get to sleep in time, I'd be fine. But if not,
Mhm.
it was really bad. And in the beginnings, I would have to go to the hospital because I suffer with dehydration. So I would get really, really dehydrated. And I'd have to go up to the hospital and give me IV fluids and try and give me pain relief. But being in a hospital when you've got a migraine is hell because hospitals are
Right.
loud.
It's like
Like,
not a very
oh,
restful place.
yeah,
Like people
no,
are like, oh, being in the hospital, we get waited on. No,
no, no.
this is not that.
Yeah, no.
This is
No, this is not a spa, this is a hospital. And there was,
right.
like
You don't
the
get sleep.
last
You
time I
don't
went up
get
there for a
rest.
migraine, there was a little girl who had to get something done to her, and so she was screaming bloody murder. Which understandable, understandable.
Yeah,
I was like that when I was a little girl too, but
yeah.
when you got a migraine, you're just like,
Like, can
"I
you
oh my
hush her
god,
up?
I can't handle this."
Give
Like,
her something.
knock her out, please. Sedate her so she's not
Her or
suffering,
me,
and I'm not
whichever.
suffering. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So after that, I was like, I'm not going back up to the hospital with a migraine.
No.
And then within 2 months, I had a constant headache develop, and I've had a constant headache since then. I've never not had a headache, and um, so it's probably something called new persistent daily headache, and
Mhm.
that's when a headache is brought on by something kind of like a surgery, and you can basically pinpoint exactly when it happened. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of what sounds like what I've got going on. But like all the tests show up fine, which is so annoying when the tests gaslight you and say, oh, you're fine, you're healthy. And you're like, no, I'm not. Oh my
Absolutely.
God. Like, nah. Like, I don't want to like have this life. Like, I'm not a hypochondriac. I know that. Like, my
Mhm.
younger sibling was 5 when they became sick with Sjogren's syndrome, which is a horrible autoimmune disease.
Mhm.
So I'm very familiar with what it's like being sick. I don't want to do that. I don't want to live this. I'm not faking it. Like,
Right,
there's
right.
something going on. Why aren't these tests telling me what's going on? Like, it was infuriating. And then um in 2011, I had a really large gallstone, and the doctor's like, "Oh, we're just gonna remove your gallbladder." And I was like, "Oh, hey, remove it, get rid of it. It's painful. Let's go." But they didn't really fully explain, like, "Oh, by the way, there's a good
Right.
chance you could end up with irritable bowel syndrome afterwards."
Yeah.
There was a list of side effects, but it's like they don't give you the full list. It's like
Right.
usually about like 7 things, and it's the most severe, severe, severe stuff. And then that's it. So based on that, you make what you think is an informed decision that's going to be the best for you, but it's not because you're missing a whole
Mhm.
bunch of information. You're not told,
Right.
oh hey, there's this procedure they could try. I think it's called like lithoscopy, and they use sound waves to try and break up the stones. And it's usually used for kidney stones. But I'm like, could you use it for gallstones? I don't know. But it was never anything brought up. And I would have really liked to have tried that first instead of
Mhm.
having my gallbladder removed because my health took a massive dive. I ended up with irritable bowel syndrome. My fibromyalgia got worse. My restless leg syndrome came back with
It's like strike up the
vengeance.
band.
Um, I started having issues with a lot of my glands. So I have problems where like I don't sweat properly. I have dry eyes. I have dry mouth. I got dry nose, other areas of things that are supposed to be having fluids come out because of just normal how glands work, but they don't for me. And
Mm.
so then I was like, oh, okay, well, my younger sibling, like a part of their Sjogren's is that it attacks glands.
Mhm.
So they have a lot of the same issues with the same glands that I have. And then I started getting stones in my salivary glands. And
Hmm.
that's something that they also have. So I was like, okay, so to me, it looks like I've got Sjogren's syndrome.
Right.
And
That
so,
that's what I'm sitting here like I'm like like and no one thought about this being hereditary because like now it's like usually
uh-huh.
these things are hereditary.
Yeah. And so I was just like, okay, so this is kind of sounding like that. So I had to push doctors so freaking hard to be like, let's do this. And so they would just do the blood work tests. But I know that with the blood work tests, you
Mm.
can, like, unless you're in the middle of a flare up, it's not going to show up. You
That's
basically need to have a biopsy. But I guess even apparently now, biopsies don't always show it. So, um, this was back, I think, in 2013 when I first started pushing of you need to see if this is Sjogren's syndrome. And it wasn't until 2 years ago when they finally were like, okay, so let's look at what's going on with your salivary glands here. You're getting these
insane.
stones. It's really, really bad. Let's see
No.
if we can like see if there's stones in there and we'll blast them out. Or maybe, if you've got narrow salivary glands, we can stretch them out. Because basically, what it is like when you have a stone in there, think of like when you put your thumb over a garden hose and all that pressure that starts to build up, especially if you've got the hose on like full. And that's kind of like happening in your face, in your salivary glands, which are like down in here. And so when you have a stone there, it's blocking your saliva from being able to flow properly.
Mm.
So there's a buildup that happens. So that causes pain. There's swelling. It can like the pain can radiate all the way like across the entire half of my face. And anytime you smell something, your salivary glands kick in. If you
So does
want to
that
eat
not have
something,
anything to do or tie into with your migraines?
I don't know. It's really hard to say. I'm such a tangled mess of stuff, and I think that there is a lot that really is connected that they aren't
Hmm.
realizing,
Yeah.
and trying to get them to be like, okay, let's look at a bigger picture. Is there some bigger disease that I have where all these other things are just symptoms, like all these
Hmm.
other diseases? And to try and get that has been pulling teeth. And I was sent to an internal medicine specialist who is specifically supposed to look at all my symptoms, all 18 of them that I have. And he was supposed to see if, oh, there's like some root thing going on. He saw everything I had, was like, this is too complicated. I'm not going to see her anymore. He didn't even want
What?
to
Did
call
he just
me
give
to
up?
tell me.
How do you
Yeah,
just give up?
he just gave up. Wiped his hands at me. Didn't want to call me to tell me I'm not going to see
Slacker?
you anymore. So after 4 months of not hearing anything back, I like call up and the receptionist is like, "Oh yeah, he's not planning on seeing you. He doesn't think he can help you." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Wait. So she makes an
No
appointment for me to like
communication, no
no
just
nothing. And so she like makes an appointment for me to come in and see him so he can tell me to my face that
what you should
I'm
have done
too
the first time.
complicated and that I should treat all my 18 symptoms individually and that he's not going to help me. I left crying. I was devastated. I'd never had that happen before where someone was like, no, you're too complicated. I'm not going to do this. And I was just
Mhm.
like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my God. Like, and I wish that I had balls at the time to say things to him, to be like,
Right.
are you kidding me? Like, you are the worst. Like, what kind of a doctor are you to be like, oh, I know you're too complicated. Screw
Yeah.
this. No. And that you didn't even want to tell me
So like if you had
that
to call
you were
back
going to
four
help
months
me.
later, you would still be waiting.
Yeah.
Just
Like,
just
how long was I supposed to like be hanging on to this? Like, are you like it just the rudeness of it all too? And I was just like, I swear, if I was a man, he would have instantly been like, "Oh no, you're too complicated. I'm not going to help you," and that would
or
have been
he
that.
would have tried
You
or
know?
sent you somewhere else or
Yeah, yeah, or
anything. Anything.
anything, anything. So it was just like, oh my god. So that was like devastating and heartbreaking to have that happen.
And how old were you
So
when this
I've just been
happened?
having to go, okay, one disease at a time. But when you're forced to do that, it's like, okay, your house is on fire. The fire
Right. 3
department
D
comes
slave
and is
first.
like, okay, I'm going to work on that bookshelf and I'm going to put the fire out there. And everything else is going to keep burning. And I'm not going to work on it all until that bookshelf is out.
It's out. Right.
And it's like, no,
In the meanwhile, your
how?
kitchen,
That
your living
that
room, your
does not
car.
make any, like, the logic does not add up. The math, come on, people. Like, seriously. It's infuriating and it's soul crushing. And for I think about 4 or 5 years, I gave up trying to get answers because it was
Yeah.
just I was hitting
It
roadblock after
happens.
roadblock. My first doctor ended up thinking it was all in my head and that I was having symptoms manifest because of it, but he didn't want to send me to anybody, even though that's what he believed was going on. So when I saw my ear, nose, and throat doctor for the first time about my stones, then he's like, do you know that your doctor thinks it's all in your head? And I was just like, my jaw must have fucking hit the
Did
ground.
he
I was just shocked. I was like, what? 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 He's like,
did he
yeah,
send
your
a did he send
doctor
a note
thinks it's
to
all
the
in your
doctor?
head. Huh?
So the other doctor who thought it was in your head sent a note to the other doctor?
Yeah, it when he like was referring me to the ENT, he's like, "Oh, and I believe it's all in her head and there's
Oh
nothing
my
going on." But there was literally an x-ray that went with the doctor to show that there was a stone in my salivary gland. So there was evidence there's something going on. It's not just in my head. But even if so, why wasn't he sending me to somebody? Like,
technically it was in your face, but I'm just saying.
yeah, 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 it was in my head, sure, yeah, because it's like
That
right here,
area.
yeah, that's my face is in my head, sure, yeah, but like,
Crazy.
you're
That
just like,
is
oh my god.
infuriating. I mean, and like this is well, like my jaw is dropped as if I mean, but the thing is, this is what we go through, people.
Yeah,
Like this is she's like one of 50 million people who daily go through this. It's like you are doing the best you can to be the best patient to kind of help
mhm,
them help you,
yeah,
but then they see these things and then punk out.
yeah,
I'm like, it,
yeah,
so what are the other like and so then we become like I guess the problem patient if we keep
yep,
pushing.
yep,
But there's no I mean in my it's like okay. And then like you said, it gets to a point you're like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not
yeah,
gonna ask any more questions. I'm
yeah,
not gonna see nobody else.
yeah,
But you're still getting worse. I mean,
yeah,
but then it gets to another point to where like your body is literally about to fail,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah,
you kind of want to be on Earth, like you want to be
yeah,
here,
yeah,
but yet
yeah,
the pain is too much.
yeah, yeah. You know, it was like it was on the cusp of turning 30, and I was like, my 20s were robbed from me. I didn't
Done.
get to have my life as a
Your
20-year-old.
childhood was done. I mean, it's
Like,
like
my childhood was robbed, my adulthood was robbed. I didn't know how much of my childhood was robbed, because of my diseases until, like, older and doing a lot of, reflection and stuff, but definitely my 20s were robbed from me when my health took a dive after my gallbladder got removed. All of my friends stopped coming around because they didn't like that I had to
yeah.
keep making rain checks because I
Hmm.
was so sick after my gallbladder was removed. I couldn't handle food. I could hardly handle just drinking water, and it
Right.
would just start coming out both ends. It
Right.
was bad. It took I think 2.5 months before I could actually start having liquid meals, and then I think it was about another 2.5 months before I could start having a little bit of solid food. So it was rough. And my friends were just like, "Oh, you can't come hang out? You can't play anymore? Oh, well, I don't like this. And oh, you're kind of reminding me of my own morality and how fragile I am. And oh, I don't like this.
Like
I don't feel
yeah, so they're gonna
comfortable.
live it up.
Bye."
So you're going through all of this and through all these years. How did your family dynamic hang up hold up? Like, at what
Oh,
did they ever start believing you? Do they believe you now? Like,
I'm glad you asked this because this was the thing that had me the most shook of all of this. Okay. So I mentioned when my younger sibling was 5, they developed Sjogren's syndrome. So we're 7 years apart. So I was about 12. So I hadn't had endometriosis kick in yet, but I still had two diseases under my belt.
hmm
And so then it was like, oh, okay, all this stuff of trying to figure out what's going on with my younger sibling, them having to go to a children's hospital, be in the hospital for months on end, all these tests done and everything. When they figured out what was wrong, the whole family looked up the disease and we tried to figure out what was going on. And okay, what do we have to do? What do we got to watch out for? How do we now live around my younger sibling with this disease? What accommodations do they need? And none of that was extended towards me as my health started to get worse. 2 years after my younger sibling got Sjogren's, my mom almost died from Crohn's disease because the doctors weren't listening to her. And we're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. And so it got to the point where like she was in and out of the hospital for an entire month. And she finally like said at one point to the nurses that were taking care of her, we're like, so when am I going to die? What kind of a time frame am I looking at? And they thought my mom was joking. And my mom's like, no, I'm dead serious. I'm dying. I've gone from 195 pounds to 95 pounds in 3 months. My hair is falling out. I'm dying. How much time do I have left to live? I've got 3 kids. What's going on? Right. Tell me. And so they're like, oh shit, that's really weird. So they're like, okay, let's bring her in for surgery and look inside. So they took a peek and saw that she has Crohn's disease. And she had major holes in her large intestine and had to have most of her large intestine removed and had to have most of her colon removed. And then when my mom woke up from surgery, they're like, oh, you have colitis. Thank God it's not Crohn's disease, because, oh, Crohn's disease is so bad. And they go on and on and on and on about how bad Crohn's disease is. And she's so lucky she's got colitis. But the test results come back. No, she doesn't have colitis. She's got Crohn's. And so it's just like, oh, okay. Like, are you kidding me? People, you're not supposed to say that stuff. Like that is like illegal to do.
Right.
And, you know, so
now she really wants to know when she's gonna die.
yeah, you know, so then there was all this, okay, now we have to try and adapt to my mom's super sick and my younger sibling's super sick, and we don't really understand what's going on with my younger sibling. And it's a lot like lupus, where basically your white cells attack healthy stuff. Not just bad stuff, but healthy stuff too. So it can go after your eyes, your nose. You can get any amount of diseases, and you can eventually die from this disease. So we're like, okay, so, you know, what's going on with this? So everything was all up in the air. It was too much for my older sister, so she pieced out and left. And so then it was just me taking care of my mom and my younger sibling, because my parents split up and my mom could not handle my dad, because my mom is a super bad person and my dad's not, and she couldn't have that facade be broken, because she's like, no, I'm a saint, and had everybody fooled. And so she's like, if the dad's around, then everyone's gonna see, oh no, wait, the mom's the bad parent and the kids should be with the dad. So he stayed away, even though it would have been like such a godsend to have him around. My grandma lived in the same town and she didn't even come help out. So it got to the point that at 16, I became suicidal, because my world was just like so scary. I had no one to talk to. My younger sibling seemed like maybe they could die. My mom had almost died already and could still die. And it was all on my plate, and I had to take care of the house and try and go to school. And it became too much. And thankfully I had a best friend at the time, and he called me right when I was like at that breaking point of actually going to commit suicide. And he's like, oh, how's it going? And I was like, blah, and just told him everything.
Damn brave.
And he was just like, that's a lot. And I was like, yeah. And so he starts like, and he was like 4 years older than me, thankfully. And so he's in college, and he's taking psychology. So he starts going all over this psychological stuff with me. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, I don't feel suicidal anymore, but life is still like really freaking hard. And so, over the years, I thought as my health started to take a dive that my family would be there and would be supportive and they would start learning about the diseases I have. But no, they didn't. When I was diagnosed with endometriosis, nobody looked it up, nobody cared. When I started having irritable bowel syndrome, they're like, oh, whatever, it's IBS, we don't really need to look much up into that. And then with everything else, it was just like, oh, actually, I think you don't think positively enough. I think you're too angry. You're too depressed. My younger sibling was like, you just need to read a book on trauma and you'll be cured. I cured my disease by reading a book on trauma. Read this book.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Gaslighting at its best.
swear
or
words, swear words, swear words, swear words. Oh, it was so crushing. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was gonna have the most amazing support system with my family because of the fact that the only one in my family who's not sick is my dad. My older sister was born with shingles. It never did anything though, so she's blessed in that way.
hmm
But we all have an autoimmune disease in my family except my dad. So you're thinking, oh, you're going to be so supportive. This is going to be an amazing family. Everyone's going to be loving you and uplifting you and helping you out. Nope, not in my case.
Wow.
And I was blessed with narcissists in my family. My mom, my older sibling, and then my younger sibling is a learned narcissist because that's just what happens when you grow up with actual narcissists. So me being sick was
hmm
seen as a betrayal to them, and I was stabbing them in the back by being sick. No, I'm just lazy and all this
hmm
stuff. And it was just like, no. And even when I started having heart issues because of a medication I took, they were still like, nope, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to think positively. And I was like, okay, no. And so actually, I did go into therapy because I did start becoming suicidal again because things were starting to become a whole lot. I had lost my job for being sick, which in Canada, it is illegal to be fired for being sick. But it was a US company that had tried moving up into Canada,
hmm
Carl's Jr. And I was so sick I couldn't fight them to be like, you can't fire me for being sick.
Right.
Like, no.
Right.
But like that in itself to take an employer to work to be like, you've wrongfully terminated me. That takes so much energy that I did not have, and the time and the money and the commitment when like I was being fired because my diseases are so unpredictable. I would like be calling in like 12 minutes before I'm supposed to be showing up for my shift, being like, I can't. I'm seriously, it's coming out both ends and my head's gonna explode. Like, I can't come to work. I'm sorry. Like, this is a food service place. You don't want me to be around people when this is happening. Like, no. And so yeah, even at that point there was still my family nothing and just didn't believe me and support me and everything. So when I started doing counseling, my therapist was like, okay, so you need to decide if you can handle their toxicity in your life or not, because they may not ever be able to change and you need to realize that.
hmm
And my mom was an alcoholic for most of my life, so I very well understood you cannot make anyone change. Like,
hmm
you can do all the praying and pleading and begging and all anything you want. Like, and especially with my mom, when she got Crohn's disease, she didn't stop drinking, she kept drinking, so she was making her disease worse.
Wow.
So I'm having to deal with all this and being like, yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah, these people may never actually be able to change. This is something I unfortunately learned at a young age, and I understand that that's what she's saying. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and give everybody one more chance. And my family is super disgustingly codependent, and I was the thing that held everybody up. And as everyone's support, but as also everyone's punching bag.
Right.
So I got so much emotional abuse. I considered a war zone what I lived in because I never knew who was going to be exploding on me with their rage. The rules were always changing of, oh, well, one time this thing's okay, but now it's not. And this one thing makes you happy, and now suddenly it doesn't. And it was constant, and it was exhausting. And never knowing like when people are going to be exploding at you, and it was violently exploding. Like they would yell and say nasty stuff, and it was always, I want to hurt you as much as possible with my words, and I'm going to bring
Mhm.
back everything that you've ever done to me, even though we've apologized and I've said, oh, I've gotten over it and I'm okay. No, 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 that's ammunition that gets used later. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and set up healthy boundaries, and we're going to try and give everybody one more chance, and let's see if we can do this. My mom was the first one to go 7 years ago. Her last words to me were, go fuck yourself and lose my number. Because we got into
Hmm.
a fight, and she just didn't like the fact that my dad and I had worked our stuff out and we no longer had issues. And I understood why he couldn't be around when I was a kid. And we talked it all out, and that upset my mom so much. And it was a betrayal to have mended things with my
Mhm.
dad. And my mom and I hadn't gotten to that point. Even though she was now in AA, she had not made amends to me yet. And she believed she
Hmm.
had, but she didn't. And so I was just like, no, I'm like, no, there is a problem here. You've not apologized for anything. My dad has. We've worked it out. We've talked it out. We figured out what's going on and everything. And now you're upset by that? Like, no. And then the fight just kept getting worse. And I can't even remember all the stuff that she brought up. But then I was just like, I'm leaving. I can't. I'm not going to listen to this anymore. Bye. Like, because I was at her
Right.
house. And so as I'm leaving, she texts me that. And so I was just like, I'm done. I can't. I can't even with you. And then my older sibling and my younger sibling were the next year. My younger sibling was all, you need to read a book on trauma. Otherwise, you can't be in my life anymore. And I'm going to cut you out of my life. And I was just like, okay, no.
Peace out.
This is not the situation. And P.S. I'm actually cutting you out of my life. I don't need this anymore.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
no.
It's like it's not funny, but at the same time, it's like
Yeah,
what can you do? It's like
right? Yeah. I'm blessed
because
that I'm
none
able
of that's
to
helping your
find
fibromyalgia.
standards.
That's stress.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah,
stress was not helping your fibromyalgia at all.
yeah, yeah. And like you can try and like think as positively as you want, but that's not going to do anything. And it was like I remember saying to them like, okay, you need to alert the media. You found a cure for all diseases. They just need to read a book on trauma. Why are you being so selfish and keeping this secret to yourself? Like, alert the media. Go now. I like literally said that to them because I was just like, if that's what you believe, this is the cure. Why aren't you screaming at the media? We have the cure for all diseases. Cancers can be ridden, everything. Like, seriously? Like, come on, give your head a shake. Like, yeah. So I was like, yeah, no, bye, done with that. And then I think 2 months later, my ex and I eloped, and my older sister flipped her lid because she wasn't allowed to be there. It was just my
Mm.
dad and my ex's parents, and that was it. Because it's an eloping; it's not supposed to be the whole family there, you
Right.
know.
That's the whole point.
And so, and everyone in my family had at each point given their blessing for us to elope because we were struggling to try and find a place to do it for 13 people, and it was still going to be super expensive. So they're like, oh, just elope, just elope. So we're like, okay, we'll take them up on it. We'll save them as much money. It's going to be as much as stress free as possible for me because that's so huge. Like trying to plan a wedding and not be stressed when you got IBS and everything else and stress
Hmm.
and that stuff just don't mix. So it's like, okay, yeah, let's just keep it as simple as possible. Nope, that offended them because I didn't tell them that we were going off to elope. And then it was like the day after I eloped, the day I eloped, I posted a video and uploaded it. And then My older sister starts texting me, freaking out. How dare you go off and elope and you didn't bring anyone and you didn't tell anyone, and grandma this and grandma that and mom blah 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 and all this stuff. And my dad is sitting there, and so I started telling him all the stuff that she's saying to me because he doesn't know how bad she is to me. And so I was like, yeah, this is what she's saying. And my dad was just shocked. It was just like, what? Your sister is saying what? And I was like, yeah, she's freaking out. And so he couldn't believe it and was just shocked. And I was like, yeah, you know what? And I told her at that point, I was like, yeah, no, I'm done. Like, I don't need you in my life anymore. You're making my elopement all about you.
Right. I was like, "This is supposed to be
No.
a happy day." Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Like weddings are supposed to be about the bride and groom, not anybody else. And I knew that they would make it about them because they're narcissists. They can't help
right,
it. That's just how they are. So I was like,
right.
you're not going to be there. It's going to be my day of joy. And you can't handle it. And so I was just like, yeah, no, I don't need you in my life. And I've been so happy. I've had no regrets. I apparently long ago grieved the loss of my mom and my two siblings without realizing it until they were gone. And then I was like, why don't I feel sad? Why aren't I crying? Why do I feel really, really happy about this? Oh, yeah. They never really were there for me throughout my life. You know, my mom
Mhm.
was never a mom. She wanted to be a mom in theory, but execution was a whole different
Yeah.
ball of wax, especially when my parents split. Then my mom just gave up trying to be a mom
Mhm.
and like hardly raised my younger sibling at all. I had to be a mom for my younger sibling. That's not something a kid should be doing or a teenager. Like, no, that's not right. And so
Mhm.
that's something that my younger sibling has a hard time with of like trying to come to me because I was their mom because our mom was so shit and still is so shit. And so it's like, but I can't be your mom. I'm not a mom. I don't want to be a mom. Like I can't. You need therapy. And that's about it. Like
Right. I mean,
that's it.
so with all of that, like, how is life now, and what do what do you do to find joy, to live in joy, to be the person you wanted to be all those years ago?
That is a very good question. So, um, I met my ex-husband actually in 2011 before my gallbladder surgery. So for a couple months, he actually got to see me at the healthiest I had been in a long time. And then he just watched as everything slowly has gotten worse over the years. And unfortunately, it became too much for him, and we did separate last year. Um, and we're still trying to be best friends. And currently, I'm living with him because I don't have anywhere else to live. So,
Mm.
that does suck. But like, and we're all each other have really for people like he doesn't have friends and he doesn't have family and I just have my dad and him, so we're like, all right, let's try and still be there for each other to support each other. But because of him, I was able to start finally feeling like I can be me. And I was able to take off all my masks I'd ever worn in my
Mhm.
entire life. There were so many masks that I had to start wearing at 8 years old. And it was liberating. And I was like, okay, so who's Sam? What does Sam like to do? Like, yeah, I love nature, and that's all I really knew about me. So I was like, okay, let's explore this. Who is Sam? Sam's goofy. Sam loves humor. I could insert humor into so much stuff, especially about being sick. And if I swear, if I didn't, I probably would have gone crazy by now, you know?
Mhm.
And then it was like, okay, so I like nature. Oh, hey, I like taking photographs in nature. Ooh, maybe that's something else I can do. And then recently, actually, as of March this year, I decided I wanted to do drag. And I was really scared about it because I was like, I'm disabled. There's many times I don't even have the energy to like leave my house. How am I going to do this? Like
Mhm.
here's this big thing I'm asking of myself to be a performer in this way where I'm wearing makeup and costumes and performing in front of people. Can I do this? I was like, I don't know. but at the same time, I had this drive in me that I was like, I really want to do this. So I'm gonna try and figure it out, and I'm gonna be a disabled drag performer and somehow make it work. And things have lined up so beautifully for me that I was able to do a workshop for beginner drag people. And then because I did that, I was granted a spot to have my first performance at the local Pride event this week. And so I made my debut performance. Afterwards, or I remember there was at 3 points where I was like, I feel like I'm gonna faint. Oh no, I don't want to faint, especially on stage. Oh no, no,
Right?
no, no.
Not now,
People
not
are gonna
now.
freak out. I was like, ah. So got through it, got backstage, was pouring sweat, breathing. My heart was going crazy. I was like, I feel like I'm gonna vomit. I think it probably took me almost an hour to finally like recover from it and be okay and be like, okay, my body's now fine, my heart's calmed down. I don't feel like I'm going to go into major medical distress. I don't feel like I'm going to faint. And I was like, okay, I think I can enjoy the rest of the evening, watch everyone else's performances. And then I talked with one of the other girls, and she's like, oh yeah, after my performance, I was like, oh yeah, I feel a seizure coming on. I'm going to go sit down. And I was just like, oh my goodness, what? So here's another performer where
That
she has epilepsy and she had a
right.
seizure afterwards. And so I was like, oh, and then someone else was like, oh yeah, I have another performer was like, oh yeah, I've got irritable bowel syndrome. I know how much that can really take effect when you're trying to perform. And then afterwards you're like, because
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately good emotions and bad emotions play a role
Right.
on, I guess. So even though there was so much good emotions of that night, it still took its
It was
toll on
still an emotion. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so I was just like, oh hey, there is a bunch of other drag performers who are disabled too. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, all right. I have community that
Mm-hmm.
intersects. Not only are we queer and we're doing drag, but we're disabled.
Right.
Okay, yes. We can understand a lot of the stuff that's going on. And the girl with epilepsy, she was saying to me, she's like, it's so nice that you're also sick because you get it. And that's just so nice. Healthy people, they
To
just don't get it. And I was like, yeah, I totally do. And I guess she also has fibromyalgia. So when I was talking to her at one point about it, and she's like, oh, the horrible burny skin stuff where your skin feels like it's on fire. I was like, yes. And so it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, you try and talk to a healthy person about
down
that.
to
And they're like,
people.
I don't get it. And
Right.
it's so frustrating when you meet just so many healthy people and they want to try and understand, but
Yeah.
unfortunately they can't. And there's only a certain extent that they can understand. So, I'm blessed that I have a creative mind, so I can try and use descriptors to try and help people understand, like, the salivary gland and the stick your thumb on the garden hose. A lot of people were like, oh, okay, I've done that before. I know what that's like. I can kind of understand what that pressure feels like, and then try and imagine how much that would suck having that in the face, but for some stuff, they don't get it, and it makes it frustrating, and then you feel so isolated and alone, and then you're like, so it's
Yeah.
great when you can
It
find
is.
community.
I mean, in finding people that, like you said, where you don't have to explain.
Yeah,
Like you just say it is this, and you're like, oh yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
we got you, we got you, yeah. And
Uh-huh.
the whole good emotions, bad emotions. That's the thing. I know even with myself, and my family, that's that's one of the things. But
Yeah.
that's the like my mom would be like, oh well, the sun is out today. You should be in no pain, right? Who said
I
that?
wish. I
I
wish.
mean,
A little sunshine, no pain.
and in her brain, it's because it's like on rainy days or stormy days, pain is don't like the
Yeah,
sign. I'm gonna use the thing about the sign on my back. That was pretty cool. I'm gonna put a sign
yeah,
on my back. Don't touch me. Like don't touch
yeah,
me. Don't hug me.
yeah,
Don't. I am unavailable.
yeah. Exactly,
But so she
exactly.
feels like if the sun is out, then Toya is great. No, Toya's at
Mhm,
baseline, just like a
mhm.
7.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, No. So and like
Uh-huh.
it's and it does suck. Like you can't like well, it at first it does feel like you can even be happy and
Yeah.
not cause pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like then what do you do? Then
Yeah.
because I have a pretty good poker face, where it's like even when things are great, I'm just like, eh, you know, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
to get too excited, just, but
Uh-huh.
sometimes things are just awesome, and when they're awesome, you just want to be like, you get to a point you're like, you know what? So what? If
Mhm.
it causes pain,
Yeah.
it causes pain,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's a lot, and
Mhm.
it's like so. What what is what does life feel like to you now? Like you have your diagnoses, you've eliminated what you can eliminate, you found your tribe. What is it like? What is it? How do you feel?
I'm feeling pretty good right now. And I'm trying to stay focused on the now and
Mm,
not be worried about what's coming down the pipeline.
yeah, it's hard.
Which can be hard,
Yeah.
and especially because right now, I just had a big, very active week, and that is not normal for me. I'm normally
Mhm.
not as active as I was. So part of that is weighing on my mind of going like, okay, am I going to have a flare? Am I going to end up in the
Mhm.
hospital? I don't know. How bad is this going to be? I don't know. But instead of focusing on that, I'm just trying to focus on it was an amazing week. I had
Right.
so much fun.
Right.
I found my community finally that I've been searching so long for, like almost 30 years of searching, and I finally found my community. So I'm like, I
Right.
want to focus on that. I got to try and keep these positive things in my mind, because if I don't, you know, I probably would get depressed again. You got to focus
Right.
on the joy and try and find the joy in your life, which can be so hard when you are living with multiple diseases and you never know, like, oh, what's today gonna happen? Like, yeah, right now I'm doing pretty good. I don't have much pain. I have been medicating a decent amount, so I'm all right. But
Yeah.
it's later on. I don't know what's gonna happen. What's my evening gonna be like? Am I gonna get a migraine? So, then you also have that trying to plan things, which I hate. I don't like
Yeah.
making plans, but it's also the complete opposite of me, because like I love to have plans. I like to
Mhm.
know what's going on and be like, okay, so if I'm going on a vacation, this is when I'm going. This is how I want to pack. This is how much I want to pack ahead of time and everything. But with diseases, it's like, oh no, you don't get that
Can't do that.
luxury.
Mm-mm. You can
If you
try,
want to go,
but
you can try, but like I'm just gonna laugh at you and go, "Shut, girl, you should have known better by now. Come on, how many years have you been sick, and you think you can just go and make plans? Ha, you know." So like,
right. I mean, and that's exactly how it is.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could pregame, you could
yeah,
do all the things to try to mitigate, and but
yeah. But sometimes life is just like, no, sorry, girl, not gonna happen.
yeah.
I see your efforts, but no, it's not gonna work. And
So
like,
like looking looking forward to the future, say like 6 months from now.
yeah.
Like what? And if we just talking about making plans, I know, but I know, but what
um,
would your life be like, health wise, and even where would you like the world to be in your as you being an advocate, like
yeah,
where would you love to see yourself and the world and all the things?
yeah. Um, well, I hope at that point I've gotten more back into my health advocacy stuff. I had to take a break
Hmm.
when my ex and I separated, because I needed me time. Like
Absolutely.
I needed to time to process everything and try and grieve. And so I put on, not all of it. I still do, like I still keep my Instagram a bit active, not as active as I used to, and I still
Hmm.
try and keep on social health to say stuff every now and then. So I would like to try and get like back to a point where I can be doing a lot more of it, and maybe try and find another avenue to be sharing my voice so that more people can be hearing things. Because one of the things when I got a job with health union was I was starting to share my journey with others, and I was like, oh, Now there's going to be other people who are in the same boat and they're not feeling so alone. So maybe
Right.
they're not going to get to the point like I did when I was 16 and suicidal because I had no one to talk to and I felt no one could relate to me. I don't want others to go through that. So I want to still find a way to be still a voice advocating for all these diseases, sharing my journey, talking about what I've gone through, because I know that I'm not the only person who's gone through what I've gone through. I'm not the only person who's had family who's been like, yeah, no, bye, and as long as there are others who be like, oh, I get that. I feel that. I'm not alone,
Hmm.
then that makes it all worthwhile. And so somehow I will find my way back into that. I also am challenging myself right now by trying to learn Japanese,
Ooh,
which is a bit of a
okay.
challenge with short-term memory issues.
Right. I
But
know.
you
Brain
know,
fog be fogging.
yeah, I have short-term memory issues, brain fog, and then I get aphasia every now and then. So trying to learn new
Ugh.
stuff is a challenge. You just read something and then it's like, oh, here, answer these couple questions about what you just read. I don't remember what I just read.
What?
Oh, are you kidding me?
Like I was reading something. What?
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Like I actually tried to take some online college courses 2 years ago, and it just became too much of a challenge that I was forgetting so much of what I was just finished reading. And I was just also becoming really frustrated and depressed about it
Yeah.
because it's a constant reminder of your brain is not fully there. When you're actually trying to do something like learn, then it's like
Hmm.
constantly a reminder, oh yeah, you can't, failure, error 404 code, cannot find this thing. And it's like,
Right.
so,
Blue screen of death. It's like
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm still trying, but I'm doing a little bit better because I also immerse myself by watching Japanese shows and movies, and I
Mm.
watch it in Japanese and read the English subtitles. So there's times where I'm like, oh, I'm recognizing those words because I've been hearing them enough times, and that's
Hmm.
like one of the ways that I naturally learn, anyways. So it's been helping to reinforce it, and I just try and remember like. Don't beat yourself up if you forget and if you have a hard time. And today was not a good learning day, then that's okay. As long as you're still trying, then that's what matters. So, and my end goal is hopefully, next September, if things keep going well in Japan with their economy and it doesn't crash, I would like to be
Hmm.
there in September and travel
Okay.
Japan and see some places because it's been a dream of mine since I was 8 and first learned about Japan, and I want to do it, and it's going to be a challenge being sick and everything, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to make it happen. This is
Hmm.
my goal that I've given myself. I talk about it, so I know it's talking about it helps it become more of a chance of it
Exactly.
becoming a reality. So I'm like, I'm going to be talking about this so much. I want this to be reality. I want to go to Japan. I want to see all these places. I want to go see all the historic places and go to all these temples and see the mountains and bamboo forests and all that. And yeah, of course, I want to go to Tokyo and see some of the main tourist stuff, but there's so much of like the historic stuff that I really want to see. So I'm giving myself a challenge and a goal, and by giving myself like a time frame, I'm hoping that can also help me be better at
Exactly.
achieving this goal, even though I know plans and everything. It's like,
But they're
but
made for breaking. But
yep. But
well,
I've
I
learned to.
I am big on accountability, and I would love to have you back when you
Oh, thank
return
you.
from Japan
That would be
to tell
awesome.
us how it was. Tell us what you've learned
Definitely.
in that year. Tell us. I mean, I would love to see you because that's the one thing I am at now, and I'm like very newly there. But
Yeah.
like yes, you have diagnoses. Yes, you have challenges and struggles and all the things, but that does not mean your life is over. And
Yes.
it's all about how you look at it.
Yeah.
And you may have
Yeah.
to reframe some things, adjust
Hmm.
some goals, but it doesn't
Yes.
mean you can't do it.
Yeah, for sure. And that takes a bit too when you're first newly diagnosed with everything. You go through the grieving process because
Completely.
you're that old Sam is dead. There's no reviving her. She's gone. She does not exist anymore. so now you're like, okay, so who is this new Sam? How does this new Sam work within these diseases? How do I
Mhm.
try and make life work while having these new diseases? And I will totally full on admit it is hard in the beginning, and it can seem like it is impossible. And
Mhm.
for many years it will seem like your diseases are ruling your life and you have no control whatsoever, and you're just like on a roller coaster, gripping, white knuckling it,
Yes.
screaming your face off. But there can come a point where it does seem to it doesn't slow down, but you kind of catch up your
Mhm.
mind, and you start understanding what's going on, and it kind of seems a little less scary, and you can kind of go, well, maybe there's some patterns I can see here. Maybe there is a way I can figure out how to have a bit of a life while still having these things. And for some people it may take a lot longer than others, and that doesn't mean you aren't valid. If your journey takes longer than other people, you're still trying. And I'm still at that point of trying. Like, there's still many times I am paralyzed by fears of going,
Mm.
what is this going to do to me? Should I do this? I
Mhm.
can't do this. I'm not going to go out today. I'm not going to do this
Mhm.
because what if? What is it going to do to me? What about blah blah da da da? And I still get bogged down, even though
Yeah.
I'm going on almost 30 years of being sick. I still have that stuff where, it still gets to me, and I still unfortunately let my diseases win a lot more than they should of limiting me. But I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm still trying to find that balance. And it's still a learning thing. So if there are people out here listening and watching and being like, I haven't figured it out, my disease is still
None of
ruling,
us have.
don't feel
Like,
bad. Like,
come join the club. Come on. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
And we'll not have it figured out together because
Uh-huh.
like like we said in the beginning, like you will have one or two diagnoses, and then you'll get to a point to where you're like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
I'm in a rhythm. I know my yeses, I know my nos.
Yeah.
Chronic illness is always like, it's like chronic illness is like that spoiled little child in the corner. Like, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
sit right here and wait till they're comfortable. Oh,
Yeah.
she's comfortable. Oh,
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
another 8 ball.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like, it's like, can you let me be great, please?
Uh-huh.
Just a little bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
No, it will not.
Yeah.
It absolutely will not.
Yeah.
So it is a constant up and down. It's a constant adjustment. But
Hmm.
as you see, like, it can happen.
Yeah.
You have community. We're both here for you. And if you're watching this and you're listening to this, know, like, you are exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
And there's help out there. There's listening ears out there. Just take a chance and reach out, and
Hmm.
you'll be fine. Like, it may not
Yes.
feel fine,
Yes.
but it may not look fine. But
Yeah.
look at us. Look at us.
Yeah.
Like, we're
Yeah.
we're, we're here.
Yeah.
And Rayleigh, I just want to thank you so much for your openness and you sharing. Um, you're gonna help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you.
Cause I saw myself in you, and I as a lot, even a lot of people like in my support group. I know that your voice and your story has a purpose. Even though it kind of sucks for you because you have to
Yes.
live it. you know, but it's gonna help a lot, and I
Yeah.
thank you for sharing it and letting me help you get it out. um Let the people know, like, is there anything, like, I know you said you're not really into the advocacy right now, but you're getting back into it
Yeah.
eventually. So,
Yeah.
like, if people want to reach out to you and connect with you, how can they do that?
So I am on Instagram. Instagram is RAYLI period RLS. So Rayleigh period RLS. And then my Facebook is just Rayleigh. I don't know what the handle tag thingy is. So
Yeah.
if you go
Okay.
on
And I
Instagram
think,
first, and then you can find me on Facebook that way because my
yeah.
accounts are linked. I am also on Health Union You can find me there, chat
Mhm.
with me there. And yes, I'm definitely down to listen if you people need someone to listen to what you've got going on. I'm game for it. My nickname in high school was Rabbit because of how much I listened to my friends and they could always come to me. So if you
Okay.
need someone, come. I'm here. I will listen. I won't judge you. I've been through so much. There's so much I haven't talked about that I can talk about that I haven't touched on. So if you think I can't relate, chances are actually I probably can.
Okay.
If it's not something I've gone through, I know someone who has gone through it, which is the unfortunate thing about my life is like, yeah, there's been so many hardships and so many struggles, but at the same time, I've learned so much. I've met so many people. Um, I've gone to, unfortunately, a bunch of children's funerals. But at the same time, that has given me strength. It has helped me be a better person, not just for myself, but also a better advocate.
Mm.
I learned so much because of being around other sick people. So I'm very empathetic. I am an empath, so I'm down to listen. I'll help out. If you want to try and figure out tools for like, oh, how do I find blah 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 blah, I'm actually pretty good at figuring that stuff out too. I have done some research stuff in the past, so if you need help figuring that stuff out too, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And so, with that, we'll close it out here. And all right, butterflies, as you heard, or she's over there. It's like over there. Yeah, exactly over there.
I'm
um,
somewhere.
she's somewhere. um, so that's just another great episode of Butterfly Chats. And until next time, we'll see you later.